Welcome to the deep dive. It's election day, and we're diving into a particularly interesting question. What could the election results mean for GameStop and its investors? You're talking potential regulatory shifts of the power of the retail investor community, and even some surprising connections to Bitcoin. You've sent over a fascinating collection of sources for this deep dive online forum discussions, news articles, and even some snippets from a recent Bitcoin conference. Let's break it all down and see what we can uncover.
Yeah, it really is a pivotal moment for the market,
Right.
especially for a company like GameStop that's at the heart of so much attention and speculation, the election outcome. It could reshape the regulatory landscape,
Yeah.
which directly impacts the forces at play with GameStop stock.
Okay, so let's start with the candidates and their potential impact. One candidate has hinted at a more free market approach, even expressing some support for Bitcoin. That's gotten a lot of people talking,
Yeah.
particularly those who see the Federal Reserve as an obstacle.
Right, and it's
Mhm.
it's important to unpack why that is. The idea is that a less interventionist approach could potentially limit the Fed's ability to influence monetary policy, which some believe creates an uneven playing field, especially for stocks popular with retail investors. We've seen concerns about liquidity with meme stocks like GameStop, and some investors believe the Fed's actions contribute to that.
And there's also been talk of replacing key figures like SEC Chair Gary Gensler, who hasn't exactly been a favorite among the meme stock crowd. So, a change in leadership at the SEC could signal a shift in how the market is regulated and potentially create a more favorable environment for GameStop.
Exactly. It raises the question of whether a shakeup at the SEC could lead to a less restrictive environment, potentially benefiting stocks like GameStop.
Yeah.
However, we also need to consider the potential downside. Less regulation could mean less protection for investors. It's a complex equation with no easy answers.
Right, there's a lot to consider. On the other hand, if the current administration wins, we might see a continuation of the current approach to financial regulation. While the SEC under Gensler has taken some action against market manipulation, many retail investors, particularly those active in the GameStop community, feel it hasn't been enough. They're looking for more aggressive action to curb what they perceive as unfair practices that disadvantage retail investors.
That's a sentiment that's definitely reflected in some of the online forum discussions you shared, particularly on Reddit.
Let's dive into those Reddit threads, specifically from RGME and our Superstock. There's a lot of chatter surrounding Fidelity's recent bullish rating of 7.1 for GameStop. What does that rating actually tell us? Is it a sign of genuine confidence in the company's future? Or should we take it with a grain of salt?
That's a great question. Fidelity's methodology for these ratings considers various factors, including financial health, growth potential, and market sentiment. A 7.1 rating does suggest a positive outlook. However, it's essential to remember that these ratings are just one piece of the puzzle.
You're right. We need to consider the bigger picture. There's also been a lot of buzz online about the election date itself, November 5th, and its potential connection to market events. Some users are drawing parallels to Guy Fawkes Day. Remember the 5th of November, and speculating about potential fireworks in the market. It's all very intriguing, especially given the history of the GameStop community and its ability to mobilize online.
It's certainly captivating how online communities weave narratives, often drawing from historical events, but as fascinating as it is, we need to separate speculation from informed analysis. Remember, markets are complex, and predicting their movements based on dates or online chatter is risky.
Absolutely. And speaking of analysis, some Reddit users have raised concerns about GameStop's performance. Despite all the attention and speculation, it's still underperforming compared to the S&P 500. That's a valid concern for any investor looking for growth.
Indeed. It underscores the importance of looking beyond hype and focusing on fundamentals. While online communities can be valuable sources of information and sentiment, ultimately investors need to evaluate a company's financial health, growth prospects, and its ability to execute its strategy.
Now let's shift gears to the Bitcoin conference you mentioned. Some of the claims coming out of that event are quite eyebrow-raising, particularly regarding potential regulatory changes.
What immediately caught my attention was Trump's statement about potentially firing Gensler and replacing him with regulators more favorable to the crypto world. If that were to happen, it could significantly impact how the SEC approaches market manipulation and investor protection, potentially creating a more favorable environment for companies like GameStop that are exploring blockchain technology. It would be a dramatic shift, and it highlights the growing influence of the crypto world on traditional financial systems. Another bold statement from that conference was Trump's ambition to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the planet. This raises a lot of questions about how that would work in practice,
Hmm.
especially given the existing regulatory frameworks.
It's a fascinating proposition, and it ties into the concerns we discussed earlier about the Federal Reserve's power.
Mm.
Some proponents of cryptocurrency see it as a potential check on the Fed's ability to manipulate monetary policy. Could a crypto-friendly regulatory environment, as envisioned by Trump, indirectly benefit a company like GameStop by potentially limiting the influence of institutions that some investors see as obstacles?
That's an interesting connection to make. It's certainly a perspective that resonates with a segment of the GameStop investor community, those who are wary of traditional financial institutions and see cryptocurrency as a potential disruptor.
And speaking of disruptors, one of the sources you provided mentions Senator Loomis and her proposal for the U.S. government to stockpile Bitcoin. That seems like a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
What's the rationale behind that?
Senator Loomis. Well, Senator Loomis is a well-known advocate for cryptocurrency. Her proposal is based on the idea of treating Bitcoin as a strategic asset, similar to gold reserves. The argument is that this could help stabilize the U.S. dollar and strengthen its position as a global reserve currency.
Okay, but how does this relate to GameStop? I'm not seeing the direct link.
It's about the potential ripple effects. If
Right.
Bitcoin gains wider acceptance and its value continues to rise, it could create a more favorable environment for companies operating in the crypto space, including those exploring the intersection of gaming and blockchain technology, like GameStop.
Ah, I see. It's not a direct correlation, but more of a rising tide lifts all boats scenario.
Precisely. And it's worth noting that this proposal, while bold, aligns with the broader trend of increasing institutional interest in cryptocurrency. We're seeing more and more companies, including major financial institutions, exploring blockchain technology and incorporating crypto assets into their portfolios.
That's a good point. It seems like the world of finance is evolving rapidly, and traditional boundaries are blurring. We're seeing the rise of retail investors, the emergence of cryptocurrencies, and a growing skepticism towards established institutions.
Mm.
It's a dynamic and often confusing landscape,
Mm-hmm.
especially for individual investors trying to make sense of it all.
That's why it's so crucial to approach investing with a critical mindset.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly following trends or relying solely on online chatter. It's about understanding the fundamentals, doing your research, and developing a sound investment strategy.
Absolutely, and that's what this deep dive is all about, equipping investors with the knowledge and tools to navigate this complex world. We've covered a lot of ground: potential regulatory changes, the role of cryptocurrencies, the power of online communities, and the importance of focusing on fundamentals. It's a lot to process, but hopefully it provides some valuable insights for our listeners.
I think it's finesse. I think it's particularly relevant for those focused on GameStop. It's a company that's generating a lot of excitement, but it's also operating in a rapidly evolving landscape. It's
Right.
crucial for investors to stay informed, critically evaluate information, and make decisions that align with their investment goals.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners, the GameStop investors out there trying to make sense of this complex world? What are the key takeaways?
The first takeaway is that the election outcome could significantly impact the regulatory environment surrounding the stock market, which directly affects GameStop.
It's fascinating to see how the GameStop story has become intertwined with broader trends in finance and technology. We're witnessing a convergence of factors: the rise of retail investors, the emergence of cryptocurrencies, and the growing scrutiny of traditional institutions. It's creating a sense of uncertainty, but also a sense of possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a period of significant transformation, no doubt. The old ways of doing things are being challenged, and while that can be unsettling, it also opens the door for innovation and new approaches.
And for GameStop investors, it's an especially exciting time. The company itself is undergoing a transformation, moving beyond its brick-and-mortar roots and venturing into the digital realm with blockchain and NFTs. They're not just a retailer anymore. They're becoming a technology player.
That's a crucial point. GameStop is no longer just a nostalgic brand for gamers. It's positioning itself at the forefront of the digital economy. And that strategic shift aligns with the interests of a large portion of its investor base, those who are tech-savvy and see the potential of blockchain and the metaverse.
Right. And let's not forget the passionate community of investors that has rallied around GameStop. They're actively engaged, conducting their own research, and advocating for the company's success. They're not just passive shareholders. They're a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, the GameStop saga demonstrated the power of collective action. A group of individual investors,
Yeah.
united by a shared vision and empowered by online platforms, managed to disrupt the market and challenge the status quo. It was a wake-up call for institutions and regulators, a clear sign that the landscape of investing had changed.
And it sparked a broader conversation about transparency and accountability in the financial system. Investors are demanding more information, more clarity, and more say in how things are done. It's no longer enough for institutions to operate in the shadows.
Absolutely. We're seeing a shift in power dynamics. Retail investors are no longer content with being on the sidelines. They're actively participating, shaping narratives, and demanding a seat at the table.
This deep dive has been about equipping investors with the knowledge to navigate this evolving landscape. We've explored the potential impact of the election on GameStop, delved into the complexities of financial regulation, and ventured into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain technology.
But the learning doesn't stop here. The financial world is in constant flux, and it's essential to cultivate a mindset of continuous learning. Stay curious, ask questions, and never stop exploring.
Here's a final thought to consider as you continue your journey as a GameStop investor. How will you use this knowledge to make informed decisions? What role do you want to play in shaping the future of the company and the broader financial landscape? Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of the market and achieve your investment goals.
Well said. The future of finance is being written right now, and it's up to all of us, especially informed investors like our listeners, to participate in shaping it.
That's a wrap on this Election Day special of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.